Good afternoon and welcome to our last meeting of March. And we're in a different configuration. Thomas is the mayor tonight, and I'm the city manager. I'm the city attorney.
Finance.
Your finance. But we're trying to comply with the COVID-19 social spacing. So I'll bring us to order. Invocation tonight will be given by our Mayor Pro Tem, Tony Stewart, and respects to the flag will be led by Council Member Beatrice Thompson. Please rise.
Let us pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to offer our prayers for those who are affected by the illness that we're experiencing throughout our country, dear God. We ask, dear God, that you bless those who may be sick or infected by this disease, dear God. And we also ask, dear God, that you just bless the vulnerable populations in our city, in our state, and in our country, dear God. Those are the elderly and those with chronic disease. And dear God, we just ask that the young and the strong in our communities, dear God, that you give them the necessary caution to keep them from unwittingly spreading this virus that's going around and help them inspire others to do the same. And dear God, most of all, dear God, we just ask for our local, state, and federal governments and the elected officials in those agencies, dear God, that they allocate the necessary resources for combating this pandemic that we're experiencing. And we just ask that you just put your hands upon all of our public service, dear God, as they're continuing to go out and to serve our city and to serve our citizens, from the public works through our recreation, for our police, our fire, to all of our city staff, dear God, who's just devoting their time, dear God, in this time of crisis. And now, dear God, I just ask that you be with each and every council member here today, dear God, that you'll help us make the decisions that are pleasing in thy name. All these things we ask in Christ's name. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes of our March 9th meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Not hearing any, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a first by the Mayor Pro Tem, a second by Mr. Harvin. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? The minutes of March 9th pass unanimously. We have one item of old business, and that item is request second reading of ordinance 20-04 to annex and zone to general commercial 9.7 acres located at 3304, 3434, and 3472 Cinema Center. Ms. McEwen?
On second reading, Mr. Maurice McKenzie, Planning Development Director, will present this item to you.
Thank you. As you mentioned, this is for second reading. This came before you at your March 9th meeting, and you did unanimously recommend, or you approved it on first reading, but this is 9.7 acres, and it is located off Clemson Boulevard. It's a piece of property there that we're pursuing annexation on, and pursuant to the previously recorded water and sewer service agreement restricted covenant that was signed by the property owner in 2017, we do request to annex this property, which is contiguous to the city limits, and it is well within our boundaries for the provisions of city services. So again, this was approved on first reading at your last meeting. We do recommend you approve it on second and final reading tonight.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, comments?
Mayor, I move we annex this per their request on second reading.
We have first by Mr. Jeff Roberts, second by Mr. John Roberts. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously on the second and final reading. We've got 6 items of new business, and the first item of new business is request consideration of an ordinance providing for insurance, issuance, and sale of City of Anderson general obligation bonds in a principal amount of not exceeding $1.6 million for refunding of the outstanding 2008 general obligation bond. Ms. McEwen?
Mayor and City Council, we did hold a brief work session prior to the City Council meeting to discuss possible refunding before you of a general obligation bond. This was to finance a fire station number 3. Given the current interest rates, it's a good time to look at the ability to refinance some debt that we have. Ms. Margo Martin, our finance director, will present this item in more detail to you.
Okay. We discussed in our work session earlier this evening that the city issued these bonds in 2008, and we have an opportunity to try to refund these bonds to get a lower interest rate. Our current interest rate is 4.39%, and we are expecting 1.75% interest rate or lower. The city is estimated to have a net cash flow savings of $132,000. There is a typo error in your executive summary. It's 132. And while it may not seem like a lot of money, it is still a good savings to the city. The city is planning to distribute a sale RFP to potential lenders tomorrow if approved on first reading. Should the interest rate proposed by the bidders come in higher or not what we expect, we don't have to go any further. The city is not out of any funding. So we are requesting approval on first reading of an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of the City of Anderson general obligation bonds in a principal amount not to exceed $1.6 million. The ordinance was prepared also by your attorney, Mike Burns. Do you have any questions?
Questions, comments? Mr. Harvin?
Mr. Mayor, first off, thank you, Margo, for bringing this to our attention. I think it's being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars whenever we can find a way to possibly save money on interest and bond rates. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we give Margo approval to see about saving the city some taxpayer funds.
Thank you, sir. We have first by Mr. Harvin,
Second.
second by Mr. Chapman. I can't follow the voices sitting down here. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Our next item of new business is request consideration of a resolution extending the due date for payment of business license fees. Mr. Kuhn will comment. We did have this on our work session agenda too. Mr. McEwen?
Mr. Mayor and City Council, this item, city staff reviewed, and we also looked at other cities such as Charleston, Columbia, and Greenville about how we can help from a local level, given this time of crisis, particular hard times for not only those that are ill, but also those businesses that are trying to survive this time where there's a major reduction in their customers in their business, restaurants particularly are being hard hit among retail, and that's a big makeup of our city. We want to provide some options to you for this. Now, there's a lot of other assistance coming down the line, and our economic development department is aggressively helping, and we pushed out a lot of information on that. We have a whole packet that we have sent out to our business community. It's been on social media. It's also on our website. So if you're watching tonight and you're a business owner, I would encourage you to please check out our website or contact our economic development department for any assistance that you may have for small business administration loans. There's a lot of those available to us now, and we can assist you with those loans. And as more information comes down from Congress and new assistance passed on to the small business, we'll certainly be there to help our small businesses as well. But this item is proposing several things, and Ms. Margo Martin will read this to you.
Okay, as we mentioned earlier in our work session, we are requesting approval of a resolution extending the due dates for payment of business license and hospitality taxes without penalties. The COPID 19 has caused many businesses to see a decrease in revenues due to restrictions, and this will allow City Council to defer payments of fees without penalties for those businesses that have been adversely affected. The city will require that each business still file their annual business license application by April 30th, but businesses may request to defer payment of the fee in the payment section of the application, or they may contact our business license office for how to get that approval process done. The payment of this license fee, though, must be paid by June 30, 2020. The city also will require that each business who is required to file hospitality forms file them by the 20th of each month following the month collected. There will be no penalty for the hospitality taxes collected beginning in March of 2020, provided that the reports are filed on time and the paid by June 30. So we are requesting approval of a resolution authorizing the City of Anderson to extend the deadline for the business license fees and the March through May hospitality fees until June 30, 2020, without penalty.
Thank you, and
Question?
that's a good summary, and I was just, a lot of cities also, and the Mayor Pro Tem made a good point, also including, accommodations tax in this. You want to talk a little bit about the accommodations tax?
Yeah, so our accommodation tax is a little bit different than other cities, and that there's a state accommodations tax, and that's controlled by the state treasurer. That's remitted to us. It's remitted to every county on a formula, so that's not something you enact locally. Our local accommodations tax is actually collected by Anderson County, and so we haven't passed that. We don't collect that locally for the city. It's remitted to us by Anderson County.
So what is their stance on that? Because it's kind of like with hospitality, it's a pass-through, that's a pass-through to us. They collected it, passing the funds over to us. So what is going to be their stance on our accommodation tax?
We haven't had that conversation yet.
All right. And then, second thing, I would just like to ask, you know, I know we've lumped the business license and hospitality into one ordinance. You know, would it be possible that if we look at them as separate issues and have them as two separate? Because I fully support one, but I have questions with the other. I don't want to say no to to a vote and then be perceived that I'm against this whole ordinance. And so I'd
Sure.
like to make a request that if whatever we pass tonight, it be in two separate ordinances, hospitality and business license.
Sure. I'll defer to our city attorney about this ordinance in particular, or it's a resolution in particular.
Yeah.
So, about breaking it up between two items, the business license tax, and then a separate item, it would be a separate resolution, just council vote is all it is. That's no problem.
Yep. And I'd just like to say before we take a vote on it, I'm 100% in support of helping all of our businesses out, you know, during this time of crisis. I think, you know, I wish we could do more, but our hands are tied on what we can do. But, and I'm in 100% support of business license delaying that because I think like Councilman Chapman said, that's a payment that's due for the whole year up front. But the hospitality tax, just so I can make myself clear and make everyone at home clear, is that, you know, it's a pass-through dollars. The businesses collect that on behalf of the city of Anderson. It's nothing that that they're having to pay out of their pocket. It's a separate fund that when businesses come, when people come to eat out, they pay an extra 2 cents on every dollar. Businesses should, put that in a separate pot and then send it to the city once a month. So I don't really see that it affects helping them. What I actually see it does, it actually hurts them because we're asking them to possibly delay that payment for 3 months. So they're gonna have a 3 months worth of hospitality due at one time in June. So so if they're struggling making just 1 month's payment now, how's it gonna affect them in June when they got 3 months worth of payment? So when we get to that point, that's gonna be my opposition and why I'm not gonna vote for the hospitality deferral, but I will vote for the business license deferral. That's my thought.
So we're still in discussion, so, any other comments, any discussion, Dr. Thompson?
was reading this, it said businesses that had been adversely affected, by all of the.
Dr. Thompson, are you talking into your mic?
Okay. Businesses that has been adversely affected. What does that mean?
It's,
Would there be some businesses that would not be adversely
ma'am,
affected?
we're not trying to define that. This is just language that is a precursor to the narrative that we're understanding that this is a time of crisis and a time that all businesses will be affected one way or another. And so we're not trying to define a business from another business in this situation.
That makes
Okay.
sense. I mean,
Yeah,
Good.
all businesses, but you assume they're gonna be adversely affected.
Correct.
Mayor, in this particular case, through no fault of these businesses' actions, they're being shut down. This has been mandated that they shut. I'm a business owner. I would hate to think somebody mandated my business to shut. This is a small token, and some of these businesses may not come back. Some of these may fail.
one already has.
So whatever little bit we can do for a little bit of time, I'm willing to do it. I agree with Councilman Stewart. They've already collected it, but it may be just enough to help somebody out. So with that, I recommend that we pass the resolution as it is written.
And can you amend yours to be specific on
Vote on
the
the second.
business
All right,
license?
we'll start with business license, okay?
Let's start with business license.
All right, do you want to have further discussion on business license?
Any further discussion on business license?
No, I think we're all in agreement.
We have a motion by,
Okay, I move that if we're going to split it, then we start with the business license.
first by Jeff, second by Mr. Chapman. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We'll talk about any conversation, discussion about hospitality further.
Hospitality.
Yes, sir.
So it is, I have mixed emotions about it because I feel like what Councilman Stewart said, we're compounding the issue that if they're collecting it, but yet they're not passing it through, I feel like that's going to compound the issue and make it even more difficult for them in 3 months. I don't know if it seems like there should be some other alternative to try to give assistance than delaying a bill. It's almost like if you're delaying a bill and the next month it's twice as much as it was, and then third month, so you got, and it may be that it's only, the combination of the three. Mr. Harbin said what it is, they're down 70%, that at the end of that, it maybe be like 1 month. At the end of 3 months, then maybe it's something they can handle, but
I was on a conference call this afternoon that the chamber did. I don't know if anybody joined in on that conversation, but it was they did a Zoom meeting from being small business.
Small business, yep.
Can't think his last name, but about small business, the process of going through the small business loan process and the forgiveness of loans and that are already with the SBA. I agree. I think ours is a small token, but there are other things that are coming from the federal government, possibly from state government that will help small businesses,
Well-
whether you're a restaurant or anything outside of that field. We all sympathize. But I didn't mean to interrupt.
that's all right. I wanted to ask, would it, and maybe this isn't possible, but is there not, rather than suspending it or postponing the payments for 3 months, there's no way to say for the next 60 days, we just don't collect it? Or we go 30 days and we just don't collect it for the next month? Because it seems like that's a better help than saying that you're going to delay the bill and compound the issue 3 months from now.
You mean don't charge the 2%?
So you could suspend the collection. It could confuse the taxpayer that's thinking they're still paying 2 cents at the register. However, if we can get the word out there enough, hopefully they would understand that and know that They're not paying that 2 cents anymore, and so then it would just be up to the restaurant if they kept their menu price that plus the 2 cents to help with cash flow, or that minus the 2 cents.
And I know there's a lot of setup issues, because a lot of the restaurants have their registers set up where it automatically adds that. I'm just,
I hear you, and I guess any change creates another problem. I think these guys have thought about it a lot. That's a good point. Anything else? Mr. Harvey?
I would, with what Mr. Roberts said, you know, I agree, kicking the can down the road until you have to pay it is probably not the most efficient way to manage cash flow, but we're in unprecedented times, you know, with our making them close and, you know, cutting their business 70% or whatever percent it is, it really doesn't matter. And if this can help them bridge to get to a small business loan or some type of, you know, payroll issues with the federal government, I've heard, you know, there's different,
Suspending the FICA and
there's a lot of different things, and I would hate to see a local business, and I don't know that it's gonna make a hill of beans difference, you know, Mr. Stewart, that, or, you know, that, but I'd hate for one to go under, and just, if they could've made it 30 more days or another week, you know, this would have become available to them. You know, I think it's a small token, and so with that, I'd like to make a motion that, you know, we approve this.
we have first,
Further discussion.
I'll second.
Are we voting on what now? Just-
first on Mr. Harvin, second by Jeff Roberts. We're still in discussion. Dr. Thompson?
Is this hospitality or is this business?
This is hospitality. Yes, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem. And then, John?
You know, not on hospitality, but when you're looking at what the federal and the state's doing as far as FICA taxes and payroll, are they forgiving them as a whole, or are they just delaying them until June the 30th? Because if they're delaying them like we're delaying them, think about how much it's gonna put on those small businesses to come up with that, all that money from all these different delays come June the 30th. That's the point that I just want, that I'm trying to hammer home, that I'm just trying to make sure that we're not, yeah, we're putting a Band-Aid on it today, but 60 days from now, it's a huge open wound, then what are we gonna do? And, that's,
The payroll, the last time we did payroll in the federal government, it was, for the employee and not for the employer. So, the employer still had to pay their part of
I mean, I
it.
think that's the
Yeah.
point. We don't really know
We
what's
don't
going
know what's going
And
to come
so
down.
if we can just add a little bit of a piece, you know, to help them a little bit, and I agree, Mr. Stewart, I mean, you made a great point, it's like putting a Band-Aid on, but you got to take that Band-Aid off. And it's a lot more painful to take it off than it is to put it on, and, I mean, I agree, but if we can just, you know, push them a little bit along,
John?
I'm in favor of that.
You know, I think David may be looking up an answer for us. I don't know, with regard to payroll. But, you know, Mr. Stewart, I agree 100% with you. And, that money's been collected already. If you spend it, if our patrons spend it, it's owed to the city, so the city can continue to do business as usual as well. However, in these unprecedented times, I can't help but feel that need myself, that, you know, it could be that slight, Harbin said it, push is the least we can do as a city, and hope and pray for the Congress to enact a bill, come up, and, you know, make something happen instead of stay divided, make it happen, give us some relief.
That's a tough
Nobody
decision.
has an answer to this.
Yeah.
It's
Tough
I think it's a
decision.
small token, so with that.
Yes. Good conversation.
Did we say something about re-looking at this near the end of this? Even though we might vote for it tonight, I may not vote for it, to re-look at this and look at those hospitality small businesses
Yes,
that
ma'am.
they are not really going to make it even with that token that we're giving them.
I think we know.
I think the word is being used a lot these days, is everything's real fluid, and so if we have to make adjustments on down the line, I think we'll be open to it.
Well, this is the last thing I want to mention, if you don't mind. To me, it's agreeably, I'm in small business and, you have sales tax, you have, a 6% sales tax, and we got 1% that went to the schools, and then you got 2% to go to the, and it adds up. And I agree. I know that it's a difficult time, and it's unprecedented, like most of us have said. But at the end of the day, I think I would be willing to agree to it as long as we don't keep kicking it down and making it worse for the businesses. Because I think that's going to be the critical thing, is that we do it now for 3 months, and then we suspend it again for another 3 months, and then that 3 months turns into 6 months. It's just, hopefully by then, 3 months we'd have some end in sight.
And I'd also like to, make it known, I mean, if you're capable of, we certainly ask that the business owners do continue to make those payments as well. They don't have to not make them.
Good point.
So let's be mindful of that as well, because we have obligations to our city as well.
I'd just like to add one more thing, if you don't. I guess the bottom line lies with me. If the business owners were having to pay this out of their pockets, I would be in 100% in agreement to pass it. But since it's not money coming out of their pockets, it's money that people who eat out, like you and I, are going to buy a hamburger for $10 or whatever, and we're paying 2 cents more on that dollar to go get that prepared meal, and I just don't see how it's a big savings and how it's going to help a small business. And
Point taken. All those in favor, raise their right hand. Opposed? Our next item of new business is to request consideration of referral to the planning commissions to rezone. I'm gonna go through them.
I'm sorry, I get out your way.
608 Boulevard from R15, single-family residential, to NC neighborhood commercial. 1226 Springdale Road from R15, single-family residential, to RM18, multifamily residential. 503 College Avenue from R15, single-family residential, to RM18, multifamily residential. 328 Kingsley Road from R15, single-family residential, to R18, multifamily residential. 796 and 798 Wilson Street from R15, single-family residential, to R18, multifamily residential. And the last one is 209 through 217 Williamson Road from R10, multifamily residential, to RM18, multifamily residential. Ms. McEwen.
Mr. Maurice McKenzie, Plan Development Director, will present these items to you, and we did lump them all together into this one. Maurice.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor, for reading those into the record. That saves me a few steps here, but these are requests to refer this to the Planning Commission, some rezonings. I'll go through and give you a brief description of each. Now, these are just brief descriptions because these are referrals, and this will ultimately come back to you. But the first one is 608 Boulevard, and the applicant's wishing to rezone large residential dwelling. It's beside Boulevard Baptist Church. Wants to rezone it to NC neighborhood commercial in order to operate a special event center, and the neighborhood commercial zoning would allow that type of use. Currently, it's zoned single-family residential. The rest of these requests are made by Anderson University, and I'll go through each of these, give a brief description. But 1226 Springdale Road and 503 College Avenue, these properties previously came to you. Last time you heard it was May of 2018. No action was taken by the city council at that time. And due to the time period that's taken place since May of 2018, we recommend to start the public process over again. And the applicant proposes to use these properties for university-related uses and zone the properties to RM18, multifamily residential, which is consistent with most campus properties at Anderson University. The next one is 328 Kingsley Road. It's about 4.27 acres, and Anderson University recently acquired it, and they wish to rezone this property in order to operate their Christian Ministries office and other uses on this over 4 acre site. RM18 zoning is recommended because, again, it is in keeping with what the university, most of the university campus is currently zoned. Next two are 796 and 798 Wilson Street. Again, Anderson University wishes to rezone these properties. They've had these in their possession for some time. They currently use them for student housing. They propose to continue doing the same. They just want to go ahead at this time, as they're rezoning or requesting to rezone other properties, to add this to their list as well. And the last is 209 to 217 Williamston Road, and looks like a lot of addresses, but it's actually Stringer Commons, which is their residence hall. It's been there for many years. It's zoned RM10 right now, which is conforming to zoning, but while they're at it, they wish to rezone it to RM18 just for consistency purposes, and that will make it still conforming. They just want to make sure that, you know, most of their properties around the main campus are zoned RM18. So again, this is a request to refer these to the Planning Commission. Once you do refer this, we are scheduling to take this to the Planning Commission at their April 14th meeting.
Did you miss 503?
503 College Avenue,
Yeah, I didn't.
in with 1226 Springdale Road.
It's okay.
Yes,
All
it came before you.
Okay.
Last time you heard it was May 2018 as well. So we wish to start the process over with both 1226 and 503.
Good. Any other questions?
And these will be in Councilman Chapman's and Councilman Roberts' district, or all Councilman Chapman's, or which?
I've got 608 Boulevard.
Yeah, the rest of them. And you have 209 and 217.
Yes.
Stringer Commons, I believe. That's
Commons.
right, yeah.
The rest of them will be the area I serve. And if I may, so we had a good meeting with the university about some master planning for this area and some discussion. So we want to, I think they're positive moves. And it listened to some of the concerns from the residents in that area. So we'll start the process for these areas. And with that, I'd like to make a recommendation. We move it to.
We have a
Commission.
first by Mr. Chapman,
Second.
second by Mr. Roberts. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously to the Planning Commission. Our fourth item of new business is request consideration of referrals in the Planning Commission to annex and zone several properties. We have 3710 Clemson Boulevard to GC General Commercial, 153 Civic Center Boulevard to RM18, which is multifamily residential, Emory Station subdivision to R5, single-family residential. We have 103 Allison Circle, which is Walden Oats Apartments, to R18, which is multifamily residential. We have 10.66 acres known as Tract 1 at 1225 Salem Church Road to RM18, multifamily residential. 100 Hudson Circle, the Hamptons Apartment to RM18, multifamily residential. And last, 1104 Salem Church Road to GC General Commercial. Ms. McEwen.
Mr. McKenzie, present these items.
Very good. Thank you again, Mayor, for reading these in. I'll give you brief descriptions of these as well, but again, pursuant to the previously recorded water sewer service agreements, restrictive covenants signed by property owners in the past, we're requesting to annex these properties, which are all contiguous to or will be contiguous to the city limits by virtue of annexation. And 3710, I'll give a brief description of each. 3710 Clemson Boulevard, the current use is an urgent care clinic. GC General Commercial zoning is recommended for this site. It is on Clemson Boulevard. The consistent zoning pattern on Clemson Boulevard is GC General Commercial. 153 Civic Center Boulevard, it's an apartment complex known as Station 153. And RM18 RM18 multifamily residential is the zoning that's appropriate and will allow this property to be conforming under our guidelines. Embry Station subdivision, it's a single-family residential subdivision, has 87 lots, about 60 are completed with houses right now, and most of the lots are less than 10,000 square feet. So the R5 single-family residential zoning classification best fits this development that's already in progress. 103 Allison Circle is Walden Oaks Apartments. And again, it's an apartment complex. Our zoning of RM18 multifamily residential fits this and allows it to be conformed. There's a vacant piece of property that was attached to that particular piece at one time. It was not developed, it was subdivided. So it is considered to be 1225 Salem Church Road. And we are recommending, although it's vacant at the time, we will recommend it being RM18 multifamily residential by virtue of the fact that it is abutting the apartments, Walden Oaks, beside it. A couple more, 100 Hudson Circle. It's an apartment complex as well, the Hamptons. We recommend it be zoned RM18 multifamily residential as well. And the last one is 1104 Salem Church Road. It's adjacent to those apartments. It is a plumbing supply company. GC General Commercial would be the zoning classification that would best allow this particular use and would allow it to be conforming. And again, these are all referrals, recommendations for referrals to the Planning Commission. In addition to it being referred, we also recommend that for the section of the water and sewer service agreement, the restrictive covenants that were signed for each of these properties, it allows the city attorney to sign any annexation petition that were not signed, and this would be an authorization by the city council. So we request that you also allow the city attorney to sign the unsigned documents on the owner's behalf. Some have been signed, some have not been. So we do recommend that the city attorney sign the necessary annexation petitions that have not been signed yet. Along with that, we recommend you refer all these items to the Planning Commission. And just like the prior request for the rezonings, this is scheduled to go before the Planning Commission on April 14th.
Thank you, sir. Questions, comments?
Question.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
And these will be in Councilman Newton's district, all of these, would that be correct?
Yes.
And April 14th meeting, I know you may have people who want to speak. What do we do for the Planning Commission meeting? Just so people will know if they want to come and speak for or against the rezoning, how is that going to be handled?
So in another item that's on your agenda, we're developing plans for virtual meetings, but also we're in consideration of that particular meeting itself, and so we're still having a discussion amongst our staff on the planning of that.
Good question.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we refer all these items to the Planning Commission.
Second.
First by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Dr. Thompson. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously to the Planning Commission. We have, my fifth item is request consideration of a referral to the Planning Commission, a petition to amend Article 17 of the City of Anderson zoning ordinance as it pertains to the definition of family. Ms. McEwen.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, this is an item that we have heard from you on, and we also heard from the community on, and this is something that we've been considering for really about a year and a half or so, but we've developed before you and put together a change in definition of family for a single-family household. Mr. McKenzie will present the details of that.
Thank you. The city manager nailed it. This is something that we've been discussing for some time, so many of you are familiar with it. But our current zoning guidelines, one part of it allows for up to 4 unrelated persons to occupy a dwelling, and that's described in our definition of family in the zoning ordinance. It's something that we have been looking into as far as not only revising that number, but also looking at changing some of the language as well to make it better fit our community. But there have been some instances where we've had multiple unrelated occupants occupy a house, and it's caused problems sometimes with parking and noise and just other concerns. So we're looking at revising the guidelines to not only potentially change the number of 4 unrelated to 3 unrelated, but also change some of the language in our document to make it more conforming to, what our needs are for the community. And we are currently drafting that. It's not complete, so this will come back before you once it goes through the public process. But like the others, at the time, we are recommending that you refer this to the Planning Commission, and their next scheduled meeting is April 14th.
Great. I know this is something that we've talked about. We talked about the enforcement aspect of this particular ordinance, and we'll pass it to the Planning Commission, and it'll come back to us. Questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
Councilman Roberts, how does the definition of family concur with what the building code says? Does the building code
I
address?
don't think the building code addresses how the occupants are related or not. It doesn't at all address
How would you?
the building code issue.
Okay.
I would also say that most, not all, but most residents are generally 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Not all. You'll find plenty 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. But I would say the majority are 3-bedroom, 1 bath. So when you start extending that, and especially to unrelated people, you can see the problems that come along with that. Parking is a big one. I think it makes for a healthier community.
I do. Dr. Thompson?
I was going to ask, how would you monitor that?
We have to monitor it right now. Sometimes there are situations where there are more than 4 unrelated people occupying a house. Not always, but sometimes we have situations like that. A lot of it is complaint-based. And we also have code enforcement officers that, as you know, they canvass the community regularly. And if they see a situation where you have 4 or 5 cars parked in the yard or whatever the case may be, that may trigger them to investigate things further. But a lot of it is complaint-based by neighboring
And would you
property.
refer to homeowners or renters?
Could be either one.
I would just ask too, I know HUD has a definition, how they define family. And we just need to make sure that we're on the same page, how they define a family as what we're defining, because I know it can get tricky with community development block grant funds and how families are defined. So do you know if this mirrors what the HUD definition is for a definition of a family?
We'll have to investigate all that as we draft our guidelines.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think too, some of the discussion has come about for this ordinance because it seems to be more common in university and college towns, because that's where some of the, discussion has come about from trying to limit the amount of students in one household, which then each have a car and each have friends. And so and I think that's where I first heard this. It was the discussion with trying to establish some kind of limit, and then apparently other municipalities have this similar ordinance, which then helps, the city to better, a little bit easier access to trying to limit the amount of people in there with maintaining that ordinance. So.
And I'll add in, 3's typically common for cities to have, unrelated. And Clemson has taken the step to go to 2, so, 2, because they just were having a lot of issues with a lot of the students that they have and how many live off campus and so forth, and the houses and how it's affecting neighborhoods. But 3 is typical for municipalities anyways.
So, and I know this is just going to the Planning Commission, but just a quick question. If this ordinance goes before the Planning Commission and it comes back to us and it gets passed and it goes to 3, how is that dealt with people who already have 4 leases for 4 people? Does it, once that lease ends, then the new lease can't come back online, or how does that work?
Oh, good question, and I think that needs to be addressed as part of the passage of this ordinance.
Okay,
Good. This starts,
okay.
good discussion. It starts the planning process, and so,
With that, I'd make a motion, we accept it, or, move it towards planning commission.
first by Mr. Chapman,
Second.
second by Mr. Jeff Roberts. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? It passes unanimously to the planning commission. Our last item, new business, actually dovetails into our executive session. I would anticipate we would come out of executive session.
Two things, Mr. Mayor. So if we can defer item B6 to after we come out of executive session for discussion. And then we also, as an amended agenda for emergency purposes, added B7. And B7 is if we can go ahead and take consideration of that.
I missed that.
It's on the new agenda.
Request consideration of emergency ordinance temporarily suspending city code section 2.71 to permit, okay, that's what you were talking about, telephonically, video conferences and other virtual means for meetings to slow the spread of COVID-19. Ms. McEwen.
This item here, we, again, looked at several cities that have had their council meeting just regularly scheduled before ours came due amongst this crisis. And we modeled after the city of Charleston in West Columbia on this, and that given the opportunity and where we're headed as far as the spread of COVID-19 and what its impact is to our community, that it's very likely we're not going to be able to have a in-person council meeting for April and possibly May. We'll have to depend on what the DHEC CDC guidelines are from our public health officials on that. But this would allow and provide the opportunity by suspending our rules of order by being in person to have virtual meetings. This has already been conducted statewide by several municipalities already, including the city of Greenville just recently had a virtual meeting. I tuned in on that. It worked really well. Our technology would be very similar to that in that you would all come in virtual. The public has the full ability, just as they're viewing this meeting through YouTube or our website or a TV channel, to come on as well. And, you would see the full presentation material as you're seeing it here and to have conversations with that. So given the circumstances that we're in, it's not ideal, but it's important for us to maintain the health and the public good of not only our city, but us as individuals as well. So we certainly need this ordinance so that we can continue to conduct business in this time.
Makes sense to me. Any questions, comments? Tim?
Just curious, because as always, it's very important to make sure that the public has participation, in our processes here and be able to voice their concerns. And I know, and Dr. Thompson probably could relay with this, is that there's a lot of people in my district that don't have internet access, elderly, that don't have means of video conferencing. And when things come up that they want to talk about, how can they still be engaged in the public process without having these means made available to them?
Right. So if they have TV, they can still watch it through our TV channel, which we do get a lot of those viewers. If they don't, maybe their neighbor does, so forth. And like I said, it's
understand that
not
part.
ideal. We're under really unprecedented situations.
I understand. I'm understand that part, but if there was an issue that is coming before council, how typically we would have someone come out to voice for or against, what their concerns are before we make our decisions on what we always hear.
That's a good point.
What if they're not able to voice their concerns? Let's just say that somebody wanted to open up, zone something that could change a zoning from a vacant store to a nightclub, and people wanted to talk about it, but then there's nothing, they don't have means to come to voice their concerns. I know you got the council members who's going to hopefully be the voice of that community as well, but we always want to keep the public engaged and let them be a part of, and
I think
hear.
that was my point. I think my point was is that probably it's come through us during this time period. You know, I mean, it would be, occasionally, I think we have our citizens that go down to Columbia and go to General Assembly. Very infrequently do you get a chance to do that in Washington. Our situation is a little bit unique where people can come and participate in local government. But I think until we get into this time frame, if we have to do this, I think our citizens we have to be more proactive in making sure that we are the voice of the people.
And I would just ask that if there's something that may be coming up that could be a little bit, I ain't gonna say confrontational, but have a little bit more discussion, is if we could possibly look at postponing that item to a later date where we hopefully, this thing can blow over, where people could come in and, you know, be part of the public process.
Yes, sir, and we'll be evaluating those agenda items, and just as you recommended.
Good point. So, anything else on that?
One thing I may add is that given that this is called an emergency ordinance, we typically don't use these, but again, we're in different times. And the last emergency ordinance is one reading, but it expires after 60 days. The city attorney prepared this document for it to go into effect April the 1st, therefore trying to get us through April and May. And it gives us flexibility. If this thing were to, things improve rapidly and we go on the other side of this and we can have our May meetings, but if not, we need the opportunity to conduct some business as well on that.
Mr. Harper?
I hope that this would be like a last resort type thing. Unfortunately, tonight we're spread out, but I appreciate staff's trying to get ahead of this very liquid circumstances. With that, I'd make a motion that we approve this.
First by Mr. Harper.
Second.
Second by Mr. John Roberts. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll pass that around. And we'll, I read 6 into the records, and that's the property on, purchase property located at 118 East Earl Street. I would entertain a motion to go to executive session.
So moved.
First by the Mayor Pro Tem,
Thank you.
second by Mr. Chapman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand in executive session. I'd entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So move.
First by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Chapman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We stand out of executive session. In executive session, we had discussion of the purchasing of, by the city, property located at 118 East Earl Street. Is there any comments or discussion on that agenda item?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we instruct our city manager to enter into an agreement to purchase 118 Earl Street for $220,000.
Second.
First by Mr. Harvin, second by Mr. John Roberts. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
First by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Harvin. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Stand adjourned. Thank you.